need. He doesn't say why we need it. He says, cherish it because it will bring you to the true heights. But I mean, I think it's quite obvious the reason why criticism is able to do that is because it exposes a type of a truth which otherwise on our own we would not be aware of it. By definition, we're blinded because all of us are selfish. All of us think about the world through our own perspectives, and we do things um, again based on based on our own what we think is our own best efforts and what we think is a great accomplishment. Criticism is really like opening up another window. Instead of seeing the world only through your eyes, now you're privileged to see the world through someone else's eyes. And just as we know in a very physical sense, the more you're able to see an object from every angle, in other words, if you just look at something from the front, all you see is the two dimensions, right? If you go maybe to the side or to the top, you might see depth, you might see three dimensions. But if you could have like a 360-degree view, then you would actually have a much better grasp of what you're seeing because you're seeing the entire picture. So I think that when we accomplish something or when we try to do something, we might be quite um, successful and quite sincere. But what we're doing is approaching it through and evaluating it through our own through our own window, so to speak. But when you have criticism, then you're actually someone is telling you there's another way to see it. And instead of running away from it, this is something that the Rebbe says, if we accepted it, it would actually raise us to a very high level. Hasidim by a Farbrengen, not, I shouldn't say not so much today, but in a traditional Hasidic Farbrengen, the criticism was freely dispensed. What does that mean? That means among friends and among sincere Jews, sometimes a person would mention about prayer, how it's not being done sincerely, or how an act of kindness should have been done with more enthusiasm. And sometimes they even singled out one another. They would say, okay, Beryl, I want to mention that you did this and this, but it should have been or could have been. And as long as the criticism was given, which more often than not, the majority of cases, as long as the criticism was given in a loving way, coming from a good heart, it was appreciated. Because, as I just mentioned, criticism is an opportunity to see yourself through someone else's eyes. And that's really very helpful to get a more rounded picture. Okay, let us begin the Tanya. I really don't know why my throat hurts, so I'll try to finish on time. Page Kufches, opposite 214. So we were talking about, so it's on page Kufches, and we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom. What we're talking about over here was the concept of Hashem's greatness that is seen and recognized through the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of creations that Hashem created in each world. And there is more than one world, and there's more than one dimension. So we're talking about the equivalent of Ein Sof, there is no end. Where and through how are all of these creations kept alive? How are they nourished? They're kept alive and nourished through the word of Hashem, which is the letters. Not only that, but each one of these creations and creatures, whether it be spiritual souls, spiritual angels, spiritual worlds, they all have a touch of wisdom, of knowledge of God. So we're starting from foreign lines from the bottom of the page. But this lowly world, with all of the life force that's found in this lowly world, it is too small from receiving and from holding it is too small. The vessel doesn't have the strength, the capacity to receive the form of the letters in its inwardness. Lahar ulashbiya, by that the letter should shine and to influence it, b'li levush v'hester, without any garment or concealment. Kamay shemeires umashbiyas l'neshamas hamalachim. In other words, the way these letters are in the spiritual beings, such as the angels, the body of the angel is refined enough, suitable enough to receive the full energy of the letter of Hashem that's keeping it alive. Whereas in the physical world, which is a lowly world, even though we obviously are being kept alive through the letters of Hashem, but we're not capable of receiving the energy of the letter the way we are. So the last line on the page, Rak ha'oda v'hashpa, rather just a ha'ara, a shine, v'hashpa, an influence, ba v'nishpa l'olam hazeh, comes and is having an influence on this world. Turn the page 216 on the top. From the level of the substance of the letter and their external part, which is the idea of hevel, the idea of ear, and this external part of the letters, which gives existence on earth, its being, we could call the seven vanities or the seven breaths, which Kohelet talks about. The world stands on these seven. As it says in the Holy Zohar, these seven are the Metzipi Hashem, the word of Hashem, Hamislabesh Ba'elam Hazeh, which is being enclosed in this world, the Chol Tzava'av, and all of the hosts, Lachiyesam, to keep them alive. Uveteichei, and in all of these hosts, which are created by Hashem, Malubeshes Bechinas Suras Asias Hadibar, inside of them is enclosed the form of the letter and the speech of Mides of Hakodeshes, Ritzene v'Chachmase v'Chuli, from Hashem's holy attributes and His will. Which is one with the Ein Sof, Betachlis completely. And this what Arizal wrote, that the external part or Malchus of Atzilus, Hamanu Moses Bechinas, Moses Behei Shel Shem Havaya Baruch Hu, which is hinted in the letter Hey of the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Hem Yodu V'Nasu Neshama Leilam Asiyah. They actually become the neshama. In other words, the most external part of the higher world becomes the inner part of the lower world. V'kein kosa b'tikunim sha'yudhu ba'atzilas chuli v'heitato mekanenes ba'asiyam. In one nugget, what he's trying to tell us is that there are many levels of receiving the letter of Hashem. So the Malachim, when they receive their strength and they derive their existence from a letter of Hashem, that letter shines brighter and they're getting it more direct. When the letter of Hashem goes into something physical, anything to do with this physical universe, the letter has to undergo a concealment. In other words, we have to put a covering on this letter, and only a little reflection of the letter can be further brought down into the physical. Okay, the second chapter, second paragraph. In a person below the mashal mishu chacham gadol haskell neflois chachma. If a person is very, very brilliant and he's capable of thinking haskalos, wondrous forms of thought, and he contracts his thought and his thinking with one letter of his speech. This would be a tzimtzum, a contraction, a mighty contraction, and a descent to his great wisdom. So kocha mamish, so to also derech mashal, v'yasam miza lein kates hayat simsim gadol. So similar to this parable would be, and even more than this parable, without end, would be an understanding of simsim gadol, otzum, a great contraction and fierce. Kasha b'dvar Hashem shamayim nasu, with the word of Hashem, the heavens were made, b'sheshes yimei bereishis, through the 6 days of creation. Uveruach piv kol tzavah, and with the spirit of his mouth he keeps alive all of the heavenly hosts. He eis hey shel shem havaya baruch hu. All of this is coming from the letter Hey, Asa Kalila, which is a very light letter. Like I said, the letter Hey is more of a breath than of a sound. As it says, when Hashem created, the word is Behi Baram, on the day that he created. The letter Hey is inserted in the word Baram, created, to teach us Behei Baram, that everything was created with the letter Hey. He makar hates maimares, from this letter Hey, one letter, it becomes the source of the 9 utterances shenim shechumi maimarishain, which is coming from the first maimah, the first utterance, Bereshis, the nami maimahu, that the word Bereshis is also a maimah. Vi bechinas Chachma hanikras Reshis, it's Chachma which is called Reshis. Ach az haisa hamshacha virida zu b'liyasu. So to look. Okay, well, let's stop over here for a second. I'll start off with something much easier for you to understand. There was a very wise guy, a brilliant man in the 20th century, one of ours, a Jewish fellow. His name was Albert Einstein. He, it is rumored that while he was lecturing his very complicated calculations, maybe 10, 15 people in the whole world really understood him. But one of his famous equations, E equals mc2, somehow everyone knows that that's an equation that talks about, I didn't even know myself, gravity, infinity, light, whatever it is. So here's a man's brilliant creativity. And if someone were to say, can you give me not one sentence, but can you give me one or two letters or one or two symbols that bring out his brilliance? So someone could suggest E equals mc2 it's just three symbols, right? Those three symbols symbolizes a tremendous theory, which is a very profound theory. In mathematics, if you have the idea pi equals, I don't even know myself, I don't remember the last part of it, but sometimes we have a symbol or an equation, and this symbol or equation actually refers to a tremendous breadth of knowledge. If we took away the word symbol in terms of words, if you open up a book and you see a little picture of the flag of the United States, that little flag, which is perhaps on the page a quarter of an inch by a quarter of an inch, is the United States of America, with over 300 million of its own citizens, and its influence, past and present, all over the world. All of that is in a picture of a flag. Again, this is not exactly what the Alter Rebbe is saying, but I'm trying to help you understand that you could have a tremendous, almost infinite amount of meaning conveyed in one letter, one equation, one symbol. Now, obviously, if you erased E equals mc2, you didn't destroy the theory at all. All you did was erase it. Or if you said, I don't agree with it, I'm going to destroy it, and then you burn it, throw it in the garbage. You haven't done anything to the theory. The same thing, of course, would be with the picture of the flag of the United States. If you don't like it and you just cross it out, you haven't done anything to the United States of America, nor to its people. On the most subtle, like almost a million zeros followed, that are following a one, in a certain way, the prestige of America went down. But it's so negligible, it would seem to be less than the blink of an eye in comparison to all humanity at this moment. Okay. So this is just a very rough statement. Now we say like this: Hashem created all of creation through the 22 letters of the alphabet. These are his letters. This is godly speech. I didn't make up the alphabet, neither did you. These Hebrew letters are in a practical sense the building blocks, or the DNA and the RNA of all of creation, including the worlds beyond these worlds, including the most spiritual of worlds, which we can only use the word light. It's just the worlds of light, Light. It all came from these letters. Now, the letters have the way it sounds, Aleph. We have the letters the way it's written as a single integer, or as a single symbol. We have the way the Aleph is written phonetically, Aleph, or Aleph Lamed Pei. Not only that, we even have the Aleph the way it's formed, which is really like a diagonal line with two dots on either side, or to use letters, the letter Vav with a Yud on the top and a Yud on the bottom. There's also, I said, the sound of it, the breath of it. And there's probably infinite variations of what I just mentioned. So every one of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are worlds beyond worlds. Each one is much more than a nuclear reactor. When we want to begin to appreciate the magnitude of God's greatness, we say all of creation comes from Hashem's language. He spoke. But when we talk about the creation, we're talking about the letter Hey. I mean, it's not even something that we could. It's staggering. In other words, from a letter Hey, which is more breath than actually a letter, we have the equivalent of infinity being created. Now times that by another 21 letters, and times that by the letters which are more guttural, which are more throat, etc. We're talking about what we don't have a language to describe the magnitude, the abundance. This letter Hey that we just mentioned is actually the beginning of the 10 sayings. So when we open up our Chumash and we look on the first day, God created heaven and earth, and on the second day, he created the firmament, the separation between up and down, and on the third day, he created dry land and the water, and things began to grow, etc. Each day, more of the letters became revealed. But all of the letters started from, in other words, all of the 10 utterances with all of their letters. And we know the power because me and you exist in this world, which is magnificent. So all of this world, which is being created through the 10 sayings, are all actually rooted in the letter Hey. And that's what he started off by saying, that with the letter Yud, he created Olam Haba, the world to come. And with the letter Hey, he created this world. Okay, so let's go back and read until we get to the dot. So he says, I'll start again. We're talking about everything was created. He ice Hey is the letter Hey, Shashem Havaya Baruch Hu. The letter Hey is Asa Kalila. It's a very light sound. As the Torah hints to this truth, that everything was created with the letter Hey. In the second chapter of Genesis, it says, on the day that Hashem created heaven and earth, the expression used in that verse is the he baram. In other words, the letter hey, which is very prominent. So it's with the letter hey baram. He created heaven and earth. He makar hates maimaris. This is the source of the 9 utterances. Shenimshechu mimaima rishen, which is coming from the first utterance, Bereshis, the nami maimahu. And as we pointed out many times, even though when we talk about the 10 utterances, it says Vayomer Hashem. Hashem said, the Chumash, the first verse doesn't say Vayomer Hashem and God said, let there be heaven and earth. He said, in the beginning there was heaven and earth. So the word Bereshis, which if you look at it, you'll see it has Beis, Rashis. Bereshis, which means in the beginning. So it is actually, if you could mentally make a little bit of a space, it would be Beis Rashis. With 2 Rashis, heaven and earth were created. Because Rashis, when we say the first, that often refers to Chokhmah, wisdom. So Bereshis nami maimahu. Bereshis is also a maima. It's the level of Chachma, which is called Bereshis. We're called Rashis. But when Hashem created creation, there was nothing to instigate or to call out. In other words, there was absolute nothingness. So we cannot say that there was something that caused Hashem to create it. So then why did he? Ki odem ayin la'abed chuli. There was no man to serve Hashem. So you can't say that the reason why Hashem created creation was so man can serve him. There was no man. Ra ki chofetz chesedo. What we can say is Hashem desires to do kindness. Hashem wants to do kindness. Va'olam chesed yibana. The actual act of creation was an act of chesed, of kindness. Now, in this, when Hashem created the world through this unwarranted, there was no reason, but as an expression of chesed, of kindness, now our job is to be worthy of this kindness or to utilize this kindness. And this too is included with the word behi baram, Avraham, because the word behi baram is the same letters as Abraham. So we could say, Biyom hi baram shmayim, on the day that he created heaven and earth, and we said before, referring to through the letter Hey, we could actually say, because of Abraham, he created heaven and earth. Ki chesed la Avram chuli. Okay, hopefully we'll continue with this tomorrow, but let me share with you just something that came to me as we're reading. To say the word to contrast would probably be inappropriate. Now that I said it, let's contrast for a moment the Jewish concept that Hashem created the world as an act of kindness, in contrast to a hypothesis, a theory that the world came in a random form through some type of I think they use the word explosion, through some type of an explosion, and they call it, I think, the Big Bang Theory, whatever. An act of kindness, in order for it to be qualified as an act of kindness, has to have intention. So, for example, if it's raining and through the rain things grow, are the raindrops doing kindness? No, raindrops have no, as far as as far as we know, raindrops have no conscious intention to fall in this place and not in another place. And certainly they don't think about, they don't have a feeling of kindness. However, it is Hashem that's orchestrating the rain. Every raindrop is an act of kindness. Every raindrop, because it's coming with intention for a purpose. If, God forbid, you follow this idea of creation coming spontaneously, randomly, there's actually very little reason to demand kindness from one human to another. Are the laws of nature kind? Are animals kind to a different species? As I mentioned to someone, if you have a garden, are weeds kind to flowers? Insects that eat up a tree, are they kind to the tree, or are they kind to humanity? Of course not. The world of nature is not a kind world because there's no intention. It's simply, as we call it, nature. But when we understand that what we call nature is divinely orchestrated, then actually it all becomes a manifestation of Hashem's kindness. And therefore we tell a human being that was created in the image of God, don't act natural. Don't be a naturalist. In the world of nature, the more powerful consumes the less powerful. There's no kindness in nature. But if you emulate God, who created creation as an act of kindness, now we could demand kindness from a person. And it's an important thing because we live in such a world which is sometimes so illogical that people think if we can only go back to nature, get rid of all of the technology and minimize the carbon footprint, whatever they call it, it would be a better world for humans. But in my opinion, if we go back to nature, we will be taking, which of course we can't, but if we truly follow the logic of nature, it's the preservation of the species, but that's not altruistic. It's the preservation of me, not of the species. So when someone says, I'm concerned about the children or the grandchildren, if that's said sincerely, then he's not worried about preserving himself at all. Okay, anyway, it's just something to both meditate and to enjoy, that Hashem created creation as an act of kindness. Okay, have a very good day. Amir Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. And we do have a minyan today at 9:30. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.